The new aggregate polling is out from Real Clear Politics, and Republicans have shot up another whole point. Again, that's in aggregate. That is, taking the summation of many different polls, Republicans have a 2.8-point lead. That's apocalyptic. When Democrats have a 5-point lead, they still lose. Historically, this means it's going to be substantially worse than it would have been on average. Now, Democrats have a big problem. They've been so hyper-focused on January 6th, MAGA Republican conspiracy theories, and abortion that they have missed what Americans truly care about. It's the economy, stupid. Well, have no fear, Democrats. Stacey Abrams has figured it out. Simply tie abortion to the issue of the economy, and then you can say, look, I know you're worried about high gas prices. And then, like Stacey Abrams said, you just tell your voters the only reason you are concerned about gas prices is because you're going to have a baby you don't want. So how about this? You terminate the life of that baby, abort it, then you can save all that sweet, precious moolah for you, your rent, and your gas prices. Now, I admit there's a rock and a hard place for a lot of women. I get the point Stacey Abrams is trying to make, but it is a bit dark to be like, abort poor people. That's really what it comes down to. Stacey Abrams is saying, in response to Barack Obama, that abortion, quote, abortion is an economic issue. The point she's making is that many women are concerned about the price of goods because they're about to have unwanted pregnancies. It is a very, very stupid argument, in my opinion, and it's a really disgusting one. No, first, people care about economic issues because it impacts them whether or not they're going to have a baby. It's the weirdest thing, but you can see they're desperate. How do you convince people that all of the campaigning you've done so far on the issue of abortion is actually about the economy? Tell them, under Democrats, you'll be able to abort those babies and you won't have to worry about those extreme costs of raising another human life. It's crazy because, I don't think most Americans are going to agree with that position. It's a very hard left, weird, progressive position. Most Americans are pro-choice, but it doesn't mean they fancy just aborting babies willy-nilly, especially to save money. Many people want to have families. But it's also just a really terrible argument that doesn't work. Look, if you are saying that the reason women are concerned about the economy is because they might be pregnant, then you've got another argument that conservatives can easily respond with. Marriage. Perhaps if you had a husband who was working and you got pregnant, you wouldn't have to worry about the high cost of gas because you'd have a husband there to handle half the heavy lifting. No, I don't think most people consider abortion an economic issue. I don't think most people think, you know what, I'm going to lose money, might as well kill my kid is an actual solution to their problems. If this is all you have to muster, I can only say I think the polling is going to swing harder for Republicans. It's gas prices. Come on. Nobody's going to the pump and being like, oh, gas is up another $1. I wish I didn't have to have a kid. I mean, I'm sure there are some people, but that's not the majority of Americans. That's not the male vote. You think dudes right now who voted for Biden are now all of a sudden being like, oh, man, my wife's pregnant and she can't terminate. I'm going to have to pay for it. Hey, look, I'm sure some will, but I'm talking about the majority of Americans. How many votes is Stacey Abrams seeking to gain by saying abort the baby? Then you're not going to be worried about it. 15? Reminds me when Bill Maher was talking about Democrats campaigning for, trans people in the military. He was like, I get that you're trying to protect the rights of these individuals, but is that a voting demographic that matters to you? I mean, it's 300 votes. Yep. Because Democrats are chasing after Twitter and not actually talking about core issues, which is why we get this. Stacey Abrams saying effectively, abort the poor. Weird. But let's talk about it. Before we do, head over to timcast.com and become a member in order to support our work. As a member, you'll get access to the uncensored Timcast IRL show Monday through Thursday, right after we do Timcast IRL at 8 p.m. We wrap up at 10. We start recording this members-only uncensored show, which can get very spicy. You definitely got to check out last night's episode with Ammon Bundy. He talks about how the FBI was withholding evidence, how they were outright accused of prosecutorial misconduct. The judge dismissed the charges with prejudice against the Bundys. So all those stories you heard about the Bundy standoff and everything, you got to hear what Ammon was talking about. It's crazy how he gets acquitted in Oregon and then they try and charge him again in Nevada. And then the prosecutors, the feds, were withholding evidence. So much so the judge was pissed. There's a bunch of other crazy stuff in that story, but you got to check it out. You can also check out the Cast Castle vlog, which is very offensive. Super excited for Rusty Cage and Blair White's cameos in yesterday's episode. And we got Tales from the Inverted World. And with your membership, our journalists will be able to keep working. We got field reporters, and we're going to make more shows. New stuff coming every day. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Here's a story from Newsweek. Stacey Abrams fires back at Obama. Abortion is an economic issue. Now, you may be saying to yourself, but Tim, you said Stacey Abrams said abort the poor. Well, I'm going to play it straight, guys. I'm being very hyperbolic. She effectively did say this, however, but let's read the story. Stacey Abrams, the Democratic nominee for governor in Georgia, said abortion is an economic issue and asked to comment on former President Barack Obama's recent comments about Roe v. Wade. In an interview last week on Pod Save America, Obama urged Democrats to relate to people's worries ahead of the midterm elections. He warned people not to focus on what Donald Trump or other Republicans are saying, because that's probably not something that, in the minds of most voters, overrides their basic interests. Can I pay the rent? How high are gas prices? How am I dealing with childcare? Obama noted the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade, which stripped away constitutional protections for abortion, is another major issue in the midterm election. Many young people, he said, had never gone through the experience of seeing us go backward on a big issue. And it's a reminder that democracy is fragile, that you have to tend to it. You have to fight for it. And this midterm election, I think, is going to be a moment in which, that battle has to be joined. And that means people have to turn up. Going backwards? Well, I'd say most conservatives view it as going forwards. Asked about Obama's comments on MSNBC's Morning Joe on Wednesday, Abrams said the former president was absolutely right. However, she emphasized that abortion is an economic issue. Quote, abortion has been reduced to this idea of a culture war. But for women in Georgia, this is very much a question of whether they're going to end up in poverty in the next 5 years, because women who are forced to carry unwanted pregnancies, they're 4 times more likely to be impoverished within 5 years. They're twice as likely to be on food stamps. This is an economic issue, and it's being reduced to this culture conversation. Later in the interview, Abrams was asked what she would do as governor to combat inflation. While abortion is an issue, it nowhere reaches the level of interest of voters in terms of the cost of gas, food, bread, milk. What could you do as governor to alleviate the concerns of Georgia voters about those livability, daily, hourly issues that they're confronted with? Mike Barnacle said. Abrams replied that having children is why you're worried about your gas price, your price for gas. It's why you're concerned about how much food costs. No, Stacey Abrams, don't. For women, this is not a reductive issue. You can't divorce being forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy from the economic realities of having a child. It's important for us to have both and conversations. We don't have the luxury of reducing it or separating them out. A governor can't address the cost of education and, quote, put money into the pockets of everyday working Georgians instead of giving tax cuts to the wealthy. Women understand that having a child is absolutely an economic issue. It is only politicians who see it as simply another cultural conversation. Let me simplify what she is saying here. As governor, she will fight to guarantee your right to terminate your baby if you can't afford it. That is actually kind of horrific. Abort the poor. If you can't afford it, we'll kill it for you. Seriously? Now, again, I can already hear all of the woke leftists being like, Tim Pool's pro-life. I'm actually not. I'm actually old school pro-choice. Not whatever this pro-abortion stuff is from Democrats. If the baby is viable, meaning can survive on its own, then there is absolutely no reason to abort. None. You can remove the baby. There may be some rare circumstances where, like, the woman is on the verge of death and you're like, what do we do? I get it. But that is so insanely rare. If the baby can survive, why kill it? That's what the Democrats are actually talking about. Their reasoning is, well, kill it because you can't afford it. Who was ever able to afford a baby? No, seriously. I know a lot of people do plan to have kids. And excuse me. And the issue is, if you're not making enough money and if you can't afford things, it's really hard to do. I totally get it. But the issue isn't to just go about terminating babies. The issue is to solve a lot of these problems we're facing culturally that result in women who can't afford to have kids. A woman should not have to choose between filling up her gas tank and aborting her child. Now that seems like a left position, right? Hey, that's where I've been for a long time. So what am I in favor of? I think the appropriate response from the Democrats is going to be like, as governor, I will work on programs. How about this? I will work with pro-life pregnancy centers to make sure that women who want to have kids or are about to will be able to receive assistance, either from the government to the best of our abilities, which is not a whole lot, and these private organizations that are trying to aid mothers who are pregnant. Let me just put it this way. Pregnancy centers, pro-life pregnancy centers, they'll give formula, they'll give bottles, clothing, carriages, strollers, whatever. And they want to encourage women to try to keep their babies, and they will do what they can to help them. That's brilliant. A bunch of leftists went and firebombed these pro-life pregnancy centers. Why is it that even at the very least, can't you offer both? Can't you say, look, women have a right to their own bodies in the event that they become pregnant? The state should not intervene unless the baby is completely viable. And I know pro-lifers disagree with that, but I'm saying if there was a compromise, why couldn't you say that? And then also say, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure we reduce abortions, and that women who are stressing about a pregnancy, maybe the reason they don't want the pregnancy is because they don't have a lot of money. So how about we alleviate that stress to the best of our ability so they don't have to get an abortion? Instead, what Stacey Abrams is basically saying, she's suggesting abortions are a way to fight inflation. That's what the Daily Mail says. She's basically saying if you're too poor, we should kill your kid. I mean, that's extreme. All right. Let's tone down the hyperbole. What she's saying is, if you can't afford a kid, you'll be better off if we abort it. I mean, that's just crazy to me. I'm sorry. That's just it. The Democrats have lost their minds. I am not a pro-lifer. I think abortion is wrong. I seriously do. But I have a libertarian cap. I have a limit. The government shouldn't be involved at a certain stage, especially when it comes to exceptions like rape. But that means that if the baby is viable, they should not just terminate it. So middle of the road, old school pro-choice. That's what they were with Roe v. Wade. Now where are they? Just abort, no restrictions. Okay, whatever, man. Uh-oh. Here we go. From The Nation. Why the economy is the dominant issue for Democrats in the midterms. Uh-oh. Wages aren't keeping up with prices, and that's voters' biggest concern. The Nation is screaming in your ears. The issue is not abortion. But I bring this story up to point out what everybody already knows and to explain the real reason Stacey Abrams is trying to say poor people should abort their babies. Come on. I don't think Stacey Abrams is outright is advocating for, poor people to abort. She's desperately trying to make them think that what they've been fighting for is an economic issue. Sorry, it won't work. When you come out and say, vote for me and I'll increase gas production, so your gas will be cheaper. People go, sounds good to me. If you come out and say, vote for me and I'll make sure you can get an abortion, because if you get an abortion, assuming you're a woman and assuming you're pregnant, you won't have to spend money on the baby. Dude, you're not addressing the economic issue for anybody. Man, talk about an amazing statement. Here we go. I'm going to take you back in time. Let's talk about a solution to this problem. The Washington Post says conservatives aren't just fighting same-sex marriage. They're also trying to stop divorce. Stop divorce? Scott Keyes wrote in 2014 for Think Progress at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Yeah. Democrat think tank. Here we go. Let's bring it to a more modern one. You can see that my name was highlighted there because this one's fantastic. Are Republicans coming for no-fault divorce? It was once very difficult for Americans to get divorced. Could it soon be again? All right. So on Timcast IRL, we had a conversation, and I basically said, along with many other people, that no-fault divorce is a problem. It is making young men not want to get married. What's the point of marriage? It is a contract between two individuals, and there are stipulations to that contract. Imagine if we created no-fault contract breach. It's like, I agreed to deliver you 1 pound of gold if you agreed to deliver me 10 pounds of frankincense. I don't know why I'm using those examples. And then one day you're like, you gave me the frankincense, but I've terminated the contract. Sorry. How does that make sense? It's like, wait, we have an arrangement. Getting married is you basically saying, we will not dissolve this for better or for worse till death do us part. But with no fault divorce, now it's like you get married, then abruptly one party to the marriage can be like, I'm out. And then you got to split your assets and everything. What was the purpose of the contract if everyone just loses out on a whim? I bring this up in the context of the abortion thing because, hey, you want a solution to the problem, Stacey Abrams? How about we eliminate no-fault divorce? If you don't want to get married, don't get married. It's really that simple. If you do get married, you have now entered into a binding contract, and there needs to be fault to break the contract, right? So, how about this? Don't get pregnant if you are concerned about whether or not you can afford to have a kid. Accidents happen, and so does assault and things like that. And that's why I am personally pro-choice, although I don't think accidents are just cause for terminating the life of a baby. For me, and again, I know a lot of people don't agree on this one, and there's a very hard, there's no real middle ground here. It's a libertarian thing. Luke made a good point the other day, Luke Rudkowski, that he's pro-life, but he's skeptical of giving the government more power to arrest people. And I'm like, I'm kind of there, you know what I mean? I can say it's morally wrong, but I don't like the idea that in a true instance where a woman has to deal with a very heartbreaking moment or something, that we consult government for this. I know pro-lifers disagree, respectfully. I just don't know. I don't know how to bridge that gap. It's just not there within my morals and ethics. So call it wrong. I'm trying, man. I can tell you there's a solution, though. Hey, don't hook up unless you're planning on having a kid. It's that simple. If you do, birth control, condoms, it all exists. Now, if someone does get pregnant, if you're married, they used to have a thing called shotgun weddings. Woman got pregnant, it's like, you better marry her, because now you've basically sworn a pledge to take care of that child. This is part of the problem. Stacey Abrams could easily address this fact. Pregnant women should have the man providing for her. Let me put it this way. Let's talk outside of no-fault divorce. Stacey Abrams could have simply said to women who are pregnant, you don't have to worry about inflation because the man has to pay child support. She didn't say that. Where are we going? So here's a funny thing. The Week writes this and then said, who do they shout out? They shout out me, Steven Crowder, and Michael Knowles. Hey, how about that? Poole suggested the policy discourages men from getting married. Suggested. It's a fact. It literally does. You hear it all the time when men are surveyed. They say they don't want to get married because they're concerned that the woman can divorce at any point for no reason at all, and they lose half their stuff. There's no actual binding contract there, so what's the point? Suggesting it? I'm stating it as a fact because it's in a bunch of studies. But anyway, they want to mention that no Republicans are actually calling for this. Yeah, we were opining. Media matters. Thanks. It's really funny. But you can see how really threatened they are. Here's my favorite. Conservatives are coming for no-fault divorce. After the fall of Roe, right-wing media have been ratcheting up their rhetoric against no-fault divorce. Expect policy to follow. Blah, 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 blah. I love this so much because they bring up me. According to Poole, we have no-fault divorce laws to blame for the rise of prenuptial agreements. Duh? What? Why not? Are you joking? You enter into a contract. The government says you can't break the contract. We pass a law saying you can. Then people say, okay, well, I want a contract stating you can't break this. Duh. Anyway, they say willfully ignoring how the court system has a long history of re-traumatizing and destroying the lives of rape and domestic violence victims. My friends, I never said that wasn't a factor. Those are faults. If a woman is being abused, she should be allowed to get a divorce. That's a breach of contract. See, they're making up fake reasons. Here's the best part. To all of you who are friends of the Timcast IRL podcast, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., you may be aware of co-host Ian Crossland, who I don't know how you describe him other than a kind of normie, liberal-ish hippie. Here's a quote. In the same episode on Poole's show, conservative commentator Ian Crossland adds, "We live in this culture where no-fault divorce is the law of the land. ... If young folks know they're in an environment where divorce is not an option, I firmly believe they're going to be more careful about who they choose to marry." What did they cut out with that ... Probably Ian saying something like, even though, look, I think no fault's probably right. women should be allowed to divorce whoever they want and abort all the babies they want. But I think it's fair to say if young folks know they're in an environment where divorce is an option, they'll be more careful. They cut out that middle part with the ellipses, and they called Ian a conservative commentator. Oh, I love it. I love it. Please watch Tim Castiglione if you don't. I know some people don't. I meet people all the time and they're like, I'm a big fan of your show. And I'm like, oh, which one? And some people don't even know we have the show at night, which is a live conversation show. But hey, it is what it is. Appreciate you guys watching. Ian is like, he's pro-choice to an extreme degree. Even I'm like pro-choice and I'm like, yo, Ian, you're not getting it. And he's like, women should not have to. And he's very, very, very pro-abortion. Maybe not pro-abortion is the right word. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's like staunchly women should be allowed to get an abortion without question, blah, blah, blah. So here you go. I bring this up because so long as we have issues like no-fault divorce, you are going to have women who don't have support for their babies. Then telling them to just kill their baby, abort it, it's insane, man. You need to consider that one reason many women may not want a pregnancy is because they're scared about how they will afford it. Stacey Abrams is saying, well, why don't you kill it? I got a solution. How about the dude who got you pregnant has to pay? I know we have those laws. Maybe we need to deal with something like no-fault divorce, and you need to be more careful. Again, I am pro-choice, meaning if a woman gets raped, yo, I am not about to force her, a little girl, a woman, or anybody. I don't think the state has that authority. You can't mandate. Now, people say, Tim, don't execute the innocent baby because of the actions of an evil person. And I'm like, there is a third party here, the person carrying the baby with their own blood and body. I know there is no simple answer. I get it. And you and I may disagree on this one. And it's not a simple moral question. I just do not, in my mind, every time I am asked this question, I do not see a scenario where I would respect the government coming in and saying, I understand you were victimized, but we are going to establish and maintain this victimization right now because we don't want the baby to die. I get it. I don't want the baby to die either. But I just do not see a scenario in my mind where the government can be like, your body is now beholden to another, even if it's temporary. It is. Sorry, guys. So agree, disagree. I'll tell you this. At the very least, I'm willing to have the conversation and I'm willing to try, but it's tough, isn't it? Well, let's jump forward. Here's the big news. Democrats drop in the generic polls in the midterms. Republicans spike. 3.1. Yo, I was wrong. Wow. When I checked this earlier, Republicans were at 2.8, up from 1.8. According to Real Clear Politics, Republicans have a 3.1 edge. Yo, look at this. Rasmussen has Republicans +7. But here's Harvard Harris has Republicans +6. Yo, this is going to be apocalyptic if these polls hold up. Democrats, as I mentioned, historically, when they're 5 points above in the generic polling, they lose. We are looking at some polls showing Democrats down 6 points. New York Times, CNN, Republicans +4. Trafalgar, Republicans +5. Now, I say it's a Republican poll. Okay. Here we got the Morning Consult saying Democrats +1. Even that is apocalyptic. Let's jump over to our good friends over at 538. They use a different polling system, and they show Democrats are at 0.4, a major drop from when they were up a whole point. Different polling system, still aggregate, showing Republicans are winning. And it's because of Harvard Harris. Republicans are up 6. YouGov, Republicans up 2. I do think it's funny that they'll use two different polls from Morning Consult showing slightly different things, two different polls from Yahoo and YouGov. Fine, whatever. I don't know if Real Clear Politics does that, and that's why it might be different. I think Real Clear Politics will only use one news organization at a time. So what they'll do is, if you see here Yahoo News YouGov, they would eliminate the older one for the newer one. But I'm not entirely sure. Either way, it's looking really, really bad for Democrats. And you know what, my friends? It's going to get worse. Bezos warns it's time to batten down the hatches, noting economic signals. The Washington Post, a key election metric for Democrats is on a sign in your neighborhood. Gas prices. High gas prices are displayed at a Chevron in LA on October 5th. Can I just stress this to you guys? Regular gas, $8.35 in California. $8.35 a gallon. How many people you think in California are probably screaming right now? And if you're not, you deserve to pay it. There's a lot more going on, man. There's a whole lot going on that I can bring up. Tons of Democrats, 22 Democrats in the House are retiring. 10 Republicans are retiring in the Senate. It's actually 5 Republicans and 1 Democrat. But across the board, many more Democrats are bowing out. 55 members of Congress, 6 in the Senate and 49 in the House, will not seek re-election. Mostly Democrats. So this should be interesting. The senators, however, that's fascinating. Republican senators bowing out opens up a huge hole for Republicans. And this is probably why you're seeing in the predictions from like 538 and others, Republicans not winning the Senate because they've got more weaknesses, despite the fact that polls are showing Republicans are going to just massively win in a red wave. There are more Republican seats up for re-election in the Senate than Democrat ones. So here we go. Let me show you some funny news. Tri-City Herald, I found this one. Benton County Democrat chair resigns after he's called out for GOP endorsement. Okay. What do you think it means when you get, what do you think it means? You get someone in Florida, a Democrat, who is endorsing a Republican, who's endorsing Ron DeSantis. Let me tell you how bad it's about to get. From Isaiah McCall, a Medium article. I got emailed this. I'm not super familiar with it. I'm not super familiar with Isaiah, but he writes a great article. A new world currency is shaping. It isn't Bitcoin. BRICS is bad news for America. In his article, he writes about Saudi Arabia wants to join BRICS. Oh, boy. He says, did you know that Vladimir Putin has been watching videos of Muammar Gaddafi's death at the hands of a CIA-backed coup? Oh, Gaddafi, that crook. Except, wait for just a second there. Did you also know that Gaddafi had wanted to create a gold-backed dinar for all of Africa? And he wanted to stop trading oil in U.S. dollars because he thought our global financial system was a giant Ponzi scheme? Maybe it had something to do with the financial crisis. Vladimir Putin is a bad guy, but he had his reasons, not to mention NATO walking Ukraine down the primrose path for pushing back against U.S. Hegemony. No one will tell you this, I will. Well, a lot of people will. I'll tell you that too, but shout out Isaiah. At the heart of these reasons are the U.S. dollar. Its corruption post-2008 is debasement at the hands of quantitative easing, and the fact that it's no longer backed by anything of value. The dollar's dead, and BRICS is coming in its place. The economic economy says Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And now we're hearing Turkey and Saudi Arabia want to join. This means the petrodollar may die. And when it does, the United States will be hobbled. I hope you realize this. You better prepare. The reason why you have cheap things, the reason why you can get computers imported from Asia for dirt costs, is because the U.S. dollar, as Isaiah points out, is a settlement layer for the world. When two nations want to trade, they first they sell their currencies for U.S. dollars and then trade in U.S. dollars. That's the petrodollar. When Gaddafi said he wanted to use gold, he died fast. When Saddam Hussein started using euro, he also died fast. But what happens now? In March of, I think it might have been 2020, actually, we were on a 9-to-1 fractional reserve system. I could be getting the numbers wrong, but basically the idea is for every $9 a bank is holding, wait. Is it 90%, I think is a better way to put it. For every $100 they're holding, they could loan out, creating $90. So here's how it works. You give a bank $100. They then create upon a docket $90 to loan to you. You then bring that $90 to a bank and deposit it. That bank now can create $81 on the financial docket and loan it out. That's fractional reserve banking. In March, we went on an infinite reserve, meaning banks could just create money and issue out loans without question. Don't you think that many people around the world probably saw that and said, hey, how come the U.S. is unrestrained in printing money and buying from us? They're just stealing from us. Now, Saudi Arabia says BRICS is the answer. BRICS formed right after the 2008 crisis. And a lot of people didn't take it seriously, but now they are. Saudi Arabia recently told Joe Biden to go stuff it. And now gas prices are going up, and this is where we're headed. I love it, my friends. I love it. Ukrainians keep a wary eye on U.S. midterm elections, fearing a loss of support. Good. Disgusting. I like Ukraine. I've cheered them on. I don't like Russia. I don't like Putin. I have friends from Ukraine. I talk to them periodically. I fear for them and their families. They've evacuated. I want Ukraine to win. But I don't want World War III. And these videos coming out of Ukraine are nightmarish. I don't think you've watched them if you support this. I was browsing Reddit. r/combat footage shows drones dropping grenades into foxholes. And you see human beings bombed. Watch those videos. I've seen conflict and crisis. I've not been in full-scale war. I've been in civil unrest and conflict where bullets have been flying, I've been shot at, and I've watched people die. I've not seen people go out with howitzers and bomb locations, blowing up, an enemy unit. Nothing that extreme. I've not walked alongside armor, tanks, Abrams, firing massive artillery shells. I've not seen people in a gunfight shooting at each other with selective fire rifles and killing each other. What I've seen is street violence with handguns and people dying. So I don't want to make it seem like I've witnessed full-scale war. But I got to tell you, watching videos of people hiding and being blown up, it's nightmarish. This war is nightmarish, and they want you to be angry. They want you to cheer for the death, and I'll never do it. They want you to think these Russians are all evil, so they deserve what they get. When the grenades fall into the foxhole, and then you see them boom and get shocked by the blast. And then they start writhing in agony, and you watch in this video as a man crawls out, shaking and covered in blood. I say, you're psychopaths! These people sending money to Ukraine that is not involved in us, exacerbating the war, and for what? So that I have to watch these videos when I read the news? So that these people can writhe in agony on the ground, screaming and in pain. For what? And you say, oh, but Russia started it. Ukraine is not a NATO ally. Ukraine is not an EU member. It is a border dispute with Russia, and I feel for the Ukrainians. But I will never support this war because the U.S., NATO could have backed off and said, we're not going to be sending anymore. It's escalated too much. When U.S. intelligence provided the information to Ukraine, so they blew up the flagship of Russia's flagship. They blew up the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Sorry. I'm like, this is getting too crazy. Russia's not talking about nuclear weapons. When we get footage of an incinerated city, children with their skin melted off, when they draft your children, when they draft you, Gen Z, I want you to remember this moment. When you voted for it. No, I'm not going to support it. Fine. Ukrainians keep a wary eye on the U.S. midterm elections. Too bad. You can fight. I respect it. But we will not, we should not be providing the cannon fodder for this proxy war. We shouldn't be in it. These people make me sick. So by all means, if you're concerned about the price of gas, you can take Stacey Abrams' advice and abort your babies. And then you'll have a little bit extra money right before they draft you and send you to Ukraine to go fight Russians. Have fun. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.